Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
He had the same athleticism. One could argue that he was perhaps even more gifted than Jordan at the age that he entered the league. You must remember that Kobe Bryant came directly out of high school, whereas Jordan went to college and then came out. So you could argue that he was even more athletically gifted than Jordan when they both came into the league. And therefore, the ability to make that transition, because we know so often young stars come out of high school and they're not able to transition into the man's game, the NBA game. So he was able to transition. He was able to carry the torch forward. He was able to win not just with Shaq, but also individually. I think those 2009-10 NBA titles for the Lakers were very, very important for Kobe Bryant's legacy.
Right. Hey folks, this is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. Welcome back. Today's episode is going to be a little different, in the sense that today we're going to be talking about someone who's not from the world of cinema, although he did write and narrate an Oscar-winning animated short. But before that, in case you're a new listener, and if you like this episode, do check out past episodes of the podcast. You can find all past episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any of the other podcast apps. Love of Cinema podcast is a place for long-form, freewheeling conversations centered around Indian cinema and streaming shows. So if you enjoy similar conversations, do consider subscribing. Also, please do rate and review the podcast in iTunes, as that will help others with similar taste discover this podcast. So if you rate and review us, it will be much appreciated. And don't forget to share with your friends an episode which you like. Back to today's episode. 4 Sundays ago, I was out for a jog when I received a message from my brother. It said, "Kobe, rest in peace," and there was a link to a New York Post article. It took me a while to process that message. First, I was in utter disbelief. I just could not believe it. I stepped over to the side of the street and started checking Twitter. It would take me almost a couple of hours to accept the awful tragic news. I guess I was in some kind of shock and just refused to believe what I was reading. Like most who grew up in the 90s, the very first two athletes who I looked up to were Sachin and Kamli. In the 2000s, if there was any athlete who I looked up to, it was Bryant. Bryant had an aura about him which went beyond his stats and his championship rings. His work ethic, his hunger, his competitiveness, all were widely influential and inspirational for an entire generation. It didn't matter if you played or even watched basketball. Although I did both, Kobe was inspirational for one and all. He was much more than a sports hero for so many. Kobe made many fall in love with the game. That's what the greatest of players do. Something which goes way beyond the numbers, the rings, and the MVP awards. Few days after Kobe's passing, I decided to do an one-off episode on this podcast in his memory. I thought it warrants breaking tradition as far as subject matter is concerned, for someone who has touched so many, not only with the excellence of his game, but also with his approach to his pursuit of that excellence, which is what, essentially, is the Mamba mentality. So I reached out to Akshay Manwani, who, besides having authored books on the legendary Nasir Hussain's cinema and the equally legendary poet and film lyricist Sahid Ludhianvi, is also a huge basketball fan and NBA commentator. Akshay was kind enough to join me on this episode to chat about Kobe's legacy, lasting on-court memories, the Mamba mentality, and why he was the defining generational player. We also chatted about how Kobe stacks up against other great Lakers and other great shooting guards of all time. So stick around as we remember Mamba and pay a small tribute in our own little way. This episode is dedicated to all the 9 people present on the helicopter who tragically perished on 26 January 2020. And now, here's my chat with Akshay Manwani. Hey Akshay, this is Himanshu. How are you?
Good, Himanshu. How are you?
I'm doing great, Akshay. Once again, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast and really appreciate it because I know that I wanted somebody to have an expert voice, so to speak, to talk about Kobe, his legacy, his contribution, his influence, and the inspiration that he has been for an entire generation. And I just wanted to set up our conversation, and then we will start talking about each of those different things that I wanted to talk with you. But while preparing for this episode, I was looking at the 1996 draft,
Right.
and I was looking at some of the players who were drafted the same year, and
Right.
quite a solid bunch, right?
Uh,
There's
it's 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 one of the greatest draft classes of all time. I mean, you had Allen Iverson, you had Ray Allen, you had Steve Nash.
yes,
I think you
McGrady
had
was
yes. You also had this. I forget his name, but the Knicks guy, center. I think he was also there. I mean, I can picture his face, but not his. I am not getting his name, but it's many people consider the 1996 draft class either better or second to, let's say, the 84 draft class, which is when Jordan came
right,
into the league. So
right.
so yeah, I mean,
So even the draft class, so to speak, is kind of a generational, I would say.
there was Ray Allen, there was Steve Nash, like I told you, there was Kobe, uh, Marcus Camby. Yeah, that's the guy. I
Oh,
think
that's
Marcus
right.
Camby.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Marcus Camby was also part of that draft. So, I mean, it's one of the great all-time drafts.
Right, right. And all of these players, ended up playing alongside Kobe for a great majority of
Yes,
years.
yes. I mean, Allen Iverson played against Kobe Bryant in the NBA Finals also.
Right.
A lot of them were inspired by him. Steve Nash won two MVPs in I think 2005 and 2006. And one of those MVPs, people say that Kobe should have got MVP in that season. He ultimately won it in for the 2007-8 season.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Ray Allen, leading 3-point scorer ever. So
Yes,
great
yes.
careers,
What a
each of these
legend.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even from this set of solid players, what do you think, your opinion sets Kobe apart? Because, like we said, all of these are like legends or near legends, but Kobe somehow seems to have left all of them behind.
So I think there were two or three things that that I think set Kobe apart. First of all, I must tell you that in these years in the post Michael Jordan era, uh, I was not like a I was not like a fan of Kobe Bryant. I mean, he was there and he was a great player. There's no doubt about that. But I was not a Kobe Bryant fan. In fact, the player who in the post Jordan era who I was a big fan of was Kevin Garnett. And I would
Yes.
say that the reason that I didn't like Kobe, in fact, because anybody who came in and the critics and the media and the fans thought of being the next Jordan automatically earned my dislike. And Kobe was one of those players. So, you had players like Penny Hardaway, who played for Orlando and his career was cut short by injury. You had
Yes.
Grant Hill also, who played in the league for a number of years. And when he came into the league again, there were immediate Jordan comparisons. Kobe was also Jordan comparison was there, Vince Carter. So all these guys, I really didn't like them because I just thought that it was sacrilege, so to compare anyone to Jordan with someone who had like dominated the league in the way that Jordan had. So he was not even my favorite. But thereafter, the fact that what set Kobe apart is that I think he had that most Jordan like competitive spirit. Like, I am going to dominate irrespective of how I'm shooting, what my stats are, what kind of form I am in. I want to get the win. His body language was like that. And that was a quality that even Jordan had. Now, you might say that, well, I mean, you don't have to show it to carry the kind of winning mentality that great athletes have, like Tim Duncan, for example. I don't think he showed anywhere near the same kind of emotion that Kevin Garnett or Bryant showed on the court, but he was just as effective and more successful. In fact, on my list, I rank Tim Duncan higher than I rank Kobe Bryant. But
Yes,
Bryant,
many people do. I've heard that before. Yeah.
yes, but Bryant just brought that competitive element game after game, like minute after minute. Like whatever I've read of him, he was extremely hardworking. He was a compulsive game watcher, like film watcher. He studied film. He studied the great players before him, his peers. He looked for weaknesses. He wanted to emulate the moves, the foot movement of all the great shooting guards before him. He looked to exploit weaknesses. So just relentless work ethic, and that is what set him apart. And again, the thing about the post Jordan was that the NBA needed an icon, who could again. Jordan had made the game a global game. So the
Right.
NBA needed a global icon who would then carry the torch forward. And like I've said this somewhere else also, that you could argue that Shaquille O'Neal and Tim Duncan, both those guys, statistically and even in terms of individual achievements, achieved more than Kobe Bryant. I mean, yes, Shaquille O'Neal had 4 championships and Kobe had 5 championships, but Shaquille O'Neal was, 3 times final MVP between 2000 to 2002 in all those 3 finals that even Kobe won. So he was the better player then. But the fact is that I think in terms of charisma and overall appeal away from the court, and just being a bigger global icon, I think Kobe was a bigger global icon than Shaquille O'Neal and Tim Duncan. And this is very important because the NBA needed a face to carry the sport forward till LeBron James became who he is in the last 5-7 years, till before he won his first title in 2012. I think the league needed a brand ambassador to carry them, help them transition between Jordan to LeBron. And I think Kobe was that guy. So I think that is what sets him apart. I mean, yes, Allen Iverson also massive following, very popular, but Kobe's appeal was even more. Let's not forget that Allen Iverson never won an NBA championship. Winning is very important. So outside of Allen Iverson, whether it's Steve Nash, whether it's Ray Allen, whether it is anyone else who went in that same draft class, nobody had that kind of global appeal. Nobody had that kind of same Jordan mentality, bringing it to each and every game. And then beyond that, he had game also. He was, basketball is about dunks and athleticism and around the rim creativity, which is what Kobe was. Much like Jordan, much like Vince Carter, he was a winner like Jordan, like some of his other peers like Tim Duncan and Shaquille O'Neal. And then when it came to playoffs and all, he was competitive, had game-winning shots, legendary playoff moments. So it's a combination of many things that made Kobe Bryant who he is and set him apart from that class of '96, where he was not the number one draft pick.
Right, right. So very interesting point that you made about NBA needing a face, so to speak, as to promote the game all over the world. I guess it's a bit like, handing the torch over from Sachin to Virat or, Dhoni. I
Yes,
guess.
yes.
While we're talking about the mindset that you brought up, let's talk about the Mamba mentality for a bit.
Yeah,
This is something that gets thrown around a lot.
yeah.
And, I'll tell you what, the way I understand it, and then I would love to hear your take on it. So, if I'm not mistaken, I think Kobe famously kind of self christened the nickname Black Mamba after watching Kill Bill. His whole approach towards pursuing excellence kind of after on came to be known as the Mamba mentality. And
Yeah.
many think that it's like that assassin mentality on court that you're going to go out there and win, and regardless of the circumstances, like you said, like Jordan was, or most champion players are. But
Yeah.
I also saw it as focusing on the process. It's like a mindset where if you focus on the process, you will end up winning. And
Yes.
Kobe used to keep on saying this. This is in the Spike Lee documentary, and he has said this more than once. That his philosophy has always been that hard work trumps talent every single time, which I've come to
Yes.
believe very strongly over the years too.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I would love to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, it's exactly that. I don't think it's the ability to hit game winning shot after game winning shot, I mean, that's also a part of who you are. And like I keep saying that every time a basketball game is on the line, and you need a player to take that shot, I without with my eyes shut and without blinking, I want Michael Jordan taking that shot. But I think the reasons we take these names, or we imagine these players, kind of delivering in those moments, is because there's incredible amount of hard work, and the confidence that they have. The confidence also comes from, putting in the relentless hours in the gym, and working when everyone else has taken time off and has done what is required for them, and not going beyond. And I think the reason Kobe got that Mamba mentality. I mean, you just read the literature that was available on him while he was alive, or now what is being written on him after this unfortunate tragedy. But everyone says this, that nobody worked harder. In back in 2016 when he retired, there was this wonderful article that I was reading on him, a long form article. It was written by this wonderful journalist called, I think, Jonathan Abrams, who used to write for Grantland at that time. And I think
Yes.
there was a great line, and it was not even, the article was not even on Kobe, it was on Tracy McGrady. It was at the time of Tracy McGrady's retirement, actually, not Kobe's retirement. And he wrote this line about Tracy McGrady, that it could have been argued that, McGrady was as good a scorer, or maybe a better scorer than Kobe Bryant also. But the game did not torture Tracy McGrady in the same way that it tortured Kobe Bryant. And the meaning of that torture is not in a, like, ki yaar mujhe jaake I have to go and play basketball tomorrow, but that torture in the sense that I have to get better at this game. I cannot sleep till I don't get better at this game. So a lot of these
It's
great
that
players,
constant obsession with the game.
yes, it's that concept. It's like, I don't know if you followed back in the day, in that 1984 draft class, there was Charles Barkley and there was Michael Jordan. One
Right.
guy went at number 3, Jordan went at 3, and Charles Barkley went at number 5. Both were great players. Both played on the 1992 Dream Team. But Barkley, as talented as he was, did not practice and did not work as hard as Jordan did. I mean, he was great, and he must have practiced sufficiently enough to do, or to do all that he achieved. But what set Jordan apart was the relentless hours at the gym, going beyond what was expected of him. And that same thing is continued with Kobe Bryant. I mean, Ray Allen, in his autobiography called From the Outside, I have it with me. He talks about spending countless hours. Like he tells a story when I think he was in college, where he finished a practice session and he was going back to take a shower, and his coach called him aside, and his coach asked him that, uh, you know, what are you doing? He said, I'm heading back to the shower. So the coach asked him that, do you think that this is enough? And he recounted this episode even in his when he was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame. He said that, when my coach told me that, do you think this is enough? That's when it hit me that if I have to be great, this cannot be that I'm supposed to take 100 shots and I take those 100 shots and I leave it. No, I have to seek excellence. I have to keep taking my three pointers or my shots till such time that it becomes muscle memory. I reach perfection. And you would read of Ray Allen that before the game started, he would arrive at least a couple of hours before the game started and started knocking down 3-point shots from all around the the 3-point arc that we see on the court on both sides, just so that, like, he tried to get into his zone even before the game started. That's what made him the league's number one 3-point shooter in NBA history. And that's the same thing that we see in Kobe Bryant. It's not about how many game winning shots he made or how many he didn't make. It's the fact that every time the game was on the line, he backed himself. He didn't shy away. When he got injured, when he had that Achilles injury in 2012-13 against the Golden State Warriors, he took his free throws like as if it was like a mere ankle sprain. So all of it is what goes into what we now know as Mamba mentality.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a phenomenal recovery, by the way. I mean,
Yeah,
people thought, that he would be out for much longer.
yeah, yeah. And
And
and at the age that he suffered the injury, he was 35 when he had that injury,
yes,
34,
yes,
35. So
great point. Yes,
so in incredible. I mean, but I just think that, I think the two or three things that set Kobe apart were, like I said, the fact that, he was the fact that his for the better part of his career, his body didn't break down. I mean, those are things which are beyond sometimes an athlete's control. Like Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, they didn't have that luck. Their bodies broke down. They were incredibly talented players. Their bodies broke down. So Kobe, didn't get injured. He had the same athleticism. One could argue that he was perhaps even more gifted than Jordan at the age that he entered the league. You must remember that Kobe Bryant came directly out of high school, whereas Jordan went to
yes,
college and then came out. So you could
of
argue
course,
that he
yes,
was even more athletically gifted than Jordan when they both came into the league. And therefore, the ability to make that transition, because we know so often young stars come out of high school and they're not able to transition into the man's game, the NBA game. So he was able to transition. He was able to carry the torch forward. He was able to win not just with Shaq but also individually. I think those 2009-10 NBA titles for the Lakers were very, very important for Kobe Bryant's
right,
legacy.
right.
Without those two
Without
titles, I
Shaq,
think,
yeah,
yeah, I think without those two titles, without Shaq by his side, if he had not won those two titles, I think that he would have had many more critics, and maybe his place would have been diminished on this all-time list of great players. But the fact that he was able to win those two titles, especially the 2010 title, winning it against the Boston Celtics in 7 games, because we knew that the Lakers were always cursed against the Celtics in 7 game series or
yeah,
whenever it went to a game seven. So the fact that he was able to win all that, it just made him who he is. And he is a top 10 player. I mean, you might have him at number 11 or you might have him at number 8, but he is there. He's very much in the conversation of being an all-time top 10 player.
right, right. And that's a perfect segue to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, the 2010 finals that you spoke of. Um, there are many memories, obviously whoever has watched, grown up watching, Kobe, and he has played so many games where he has utterly dominated and many times single-handedly closed out games.
Yeah,
And, there is, of course, his career high against the Raptors.
yeah,
There is
81.
his right 81. There is his 61 against the Knicks in 2009. But my favorite memory came from the 2010 finals, and it
Right.
wasn't Game 7, but I remember it was Game 3.
Okay.
And I still recall that Game 1, Lakers won because they dominated all 4 quarters. So the Lakers went up 1-0. And in
Okay.
Game 2, um, Rondo and Allen both fired, and Kobe had a bad
Okay.
night. So, it
Okay.
both ways, it was like a plus plus for Celtics. And there were also some terrible calls by the referees, I remember. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember that the officiating was not that, great. And the series was
Okay.
tied. And now we go into the all crucial third game.
Right.
And everyone's expecting, especially Celtics are expecting Kobe, to come back strong and possibly, hog the ball and try to take it in his own hands, which was kind of his reputation, like you said, and he
Right.
often got, tagged for being a ball hogger. But what happened was that Kobe, I think, only scored like 23 or 28 points in game 3. I don't
Okay.
remember the exact number. You might know it. But my favorite memories from that game 3, because, Kobe had some beautiful screens in that game.
Okay.
And he kept on making this excellent plays and just feeding Fisher. And
Right.
Fisher went like 11 of 16 or 11 of 18 or something in the fourth quarter, and they closed out the game. And, that was one of those examples where Kobe was exactly the opposite of what, the stereotypical Kobe was supposed to be, ball hogger and trying to take things in his hands. And he used to obviously deliver while doing that. But this game was so beautiful, I thought, because, he completely let someone else have the spotlight. in probably the most crucial game of the finals. And I thought that was a great show of character. So that was my favorite memory, one of my favorite memories. What were some of
Okay.
yours?
Well, I have very bad memories of Game Three because I don't know it from Kobe's point of view, but I know that this was the game that Ray Allen completely he went missing. Like
Yes,
I've
yes.
just opened the page and I know that Game Two he had set at a
I think he
then
had
NBA.
0 points. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he had 2 points, and
Oh, okay.
those 2 points came via free throws.
Free throws. Okay, there
Yeah,
you go.
and he was 0 of 13 from the field. He was 0 of 8 from the 3-point line. And the irony is that just the previous game, which was game two, he had set a then NBA Finals record for
Threes.
most threes in
Yes.
an NBA Finals game.
Yeah, he
And
was hard on that game. I remember.
yes,
Yeah.
and the irony was that this game was played on the Celtics home floor, and that game where he set the record was on the Lakers home floor. So the fact that he set a finals record for most threes in an NBA finals came on the road, but on his own home floor, he just drew complete blanks. And the way to look at it is that it was at that time it was the 2-3-2 format, not 2-2-1-1-1, how it is now,
Right,
the NBA
right.
finals in terms of home and
The
away.
old format. Yes.
So if after the Celtics had won game 2 1-all, they actually could have won games 3, 4, and 5. They won 4 and 5. But game 3, if Ray Allen had just connected maybe on 2 3-pointers or three field goals, one of them being a 3-pointer, this would have been Celtics 4-1 instead of having lost 3-4. So I have terrible memories of game three. I didn't look at anything. I was just so disappointed by Ray Allen's shooting. But well, one can't complain. I mean, he got you the game to win.
Oh,
So
yes. Yes.
yeah. But again, I don't think Bryant had a great series. But I think I mean, compared to some of the other finals performances that we've seen from other players. But I think again, I think he willed his team to that win.
Yes. Exactly. Right.
By themselves, I don't think there was exceptional talent. Like I know Paul Gasol was there, and many people consider him like one of the greatest international players of all time.
Sure.
Probably second only to Dirk Nowitzki, and now Luka Doncic might end up being better than him. But it's not a it I mean, the second best star on that team was not Scottie Pippen. It wasn't Kobe Bryant, like how Kobe Bryant was on the 2000-2002 team. Paul Gasol was not Kobe Bryant. LeBron James had Dwayne Wade. Tim Duncan had Kawhi Leonard in 2014. LeBron had Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson. So it wasn't that kind of talent that Kobe Bryant had. But I think the fact that he managed to get these guys to deliver at the right time, Andrew Bynum, Pau Gasol, Derek Fisher, Ron Artest, and in fact in Game 7 I remember the run was they were trailing in Game 7, but it was basically Ron Artest who kind of saved the day for them. Ron Artest, Derek Fisher, they hit a couple of big shots, and the Lakers eventually won. And I think the reason is that because that Kobe effect was there, that we are not going to lose no matter what.
And what would be your favorite Kobe memory, if any?
Well, I have said it also. I think just the fact that that this 2010 finals win, it was, and his arms outstretched on the scorer's table after he's won the game 7, and wearing the
Oh, yes,
finals
yes, that iconic
winner's
picture.
hat.
Yeah.
Yes, that iconic image. I think it just says so much, because again, let's assume that they lose that series. They lose the 2010 finals. It would basically mean that even if he had won the 2009 finals, what it would have meant that Kevin Garnett had two titles, 2008 and 2010, and Kobe Bryant just by himself would have had one title. Because the first three, everyone unfairly only gives it to Shaq. It's not like that. I think Shaq was a big part of the Lakers' success for the 2000 title, and even if he was more dominant even in 2001 and 2002, but Kobe Bryant in 2001 and 2002 made substantive contributions to that to those Lakers championships. But in 2009, if it was just 2009, and had Garnett not got injured in 2009, and won both those championships, 2009 and 2010, though he played also. But then, what would Kobe's legacy have been? So just the fact that he ends up winning both 2009 and 2010, and he has two titles where he's the Finals MVP and he's the main guy. The fact that he wins a game seven against the Boston Celtics, arch rivals, they had never done something like that. The fact that they win on their home floor, uh, I think it's just a culmination of everything that Kobe, wanted or fought for. Like, he fought with Shaq, he fought with other teammates because he ultimately he was all about winning. So for me, my greatest memory of Kobe Bryant is that, and I must tell you that in that moment I hated him because I was cheering for Boston.
Boston, right?
But but
Were you
but
always a Celtics fan?
no, I actually have been a Jordan fan, a Celtics fan, and then primarily, I have liked teams based on the players that I support. So yes,
Right.
Celtics was Garnett, but I always preferred the Celtics over the Lakers. Uh, mm, then thereafter, after Garnett, it was, I always supported the Oklahoma City Thunder because I loved Russell Westbrook. I still do, even though he kind of tortures me with some of his decision making and his shot
Yeah, yeah,
making,
yeah.
short decisions. And now I'm a Giannis fan, so I support Milwaukee. But I mean, if Giannis was not with Milwaukee, I wouldn't care much.
Yeah, yeah. Boston has had some great players. I mean, like you said, Real, and
I
I
mean,
even used to
yeah,
like Paul Pierce a lot.
yeah, Paul
And
Pierce,
even
Garnett,
Rondo was
and
one of my favorite guards.
yes, yes. And then back in the day, of course, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and all those guys, they were just like amazing.
Actually, let's talk about Kobe's legacy. Where does Kobe stack in the conversation about the greatest Laker ever?
So, this is a question that even I thought of. I would say that, without being disrespectful to his memory or him, I think so. So let's just put some perspective. I think, the right from the days of the first three-peat that was won by any NBA team was won actually by the Lakers. I think back then they were
Right.
known as the Minneapolis Lakers. So between 1952 to 1954, and George Mikan was the big man, literally the big man, and responsible for those three titles. And then, then they had, the great Jerry West and Will Chamberlain joined them. They won a title in 72, I think, 72. They win a title. 71, 72, when they, pulled off the league's best, the most successive wins, 33 games. Elgin Baylor had retired just at the beginning of that season, but otherwise, even he was a great Laker. Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, then Will Chamberlain came and joined them. It was Jerry West and Will Chamberlain who got them that title in 72. Then they had Kareem come to the Lakers. Then Magic joined them in 1979, 1980. Then they had Shaq come to them after he decided to walk out of the Orlando Magic. Kobe was drafted in 1996. So these are the, let's say, the five or six great names. But I would say that given the fact that people like George Mikan's time, I mean, the league was much smaller. Will Chamberlain played for a different team before he joined the Lakers. Was the case with Kareem. Same was the case with Shaq. I think it's basically a toss up between Magic Johnson, Jerry West, and Kobe Bryant. Because again, Elgin Baylor, as good as he was not part of that title-winning team in 1972. So it's basically between these three guys. These three guys who won championships, even if Jerry West won only once in 1972. And I think between those three players, given the fact that they were Lakers for life, Magic, Jerry West, and Kobe Bryant, I think if you just look at in terms of who revolutionized the game most, who won the most, I would say that Magic is number one, and then Kobe is just behind him. Like there's not much. I can completely understand if somebody picks up Kobe as their number one player. But I think Magic is number one, Kobe's number two, and then you have Jerry West. These are the three greatest Lakers of all time. Somebody might want to say, "Hey, Kareem achieved a lot more." Yes, that is true, but Kareem achieved a lot more. He won his first NBA title as a Milwaukee Bucks player. He won with the Lakers. He won, I think, 5 titles with the Lakers. But one of his very first NBA championship came as a Milwaukee Bucks player. He won his regular season MVP awards with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think a majority of those regular season MVP awards are with the Milwaukee Bucks. So just purely of these names that I mentioned, Mikan, Shaq, Kobe, Jerry West, Magic, you have to look at who were Lakers for life, which is basically Magic, Kobe, and Jerry West. And I think just in terms of the positions they played, I think Magic just revolutionized the position that he played. I mean, you didn't have a 6'10" point guard before Magic Johnson came into the league.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
handled the ball the way that he handled the ball. In that sense, Kobe didn't do anything new because Jordan was there before him, and so he didn't bring anything new to his position. And Jordan's numbers are certainly more impressive than Kobe's numbers. But yes, in terms of staying with the franchise, also winning 5 NBA championships, his legacy is more than Jerry West's legacy. So I would say Kobe Bryant goes down in my books as the second greatest Laker of all time.
You know how the officiating has been clamping down much harder, right? As the
Yes,
years have
that's
gone.
true.
And so
Yes,
that, some would argue that that makes it probably makes the game more fair because maybe, before that, if you had a certain like quote unquote street style of playing ball,
yes,
you were not going to be called out as often as you are probably now, right? And the
yes,
thing about
yes.
having a street style or the physicality is that not everybody has that. And like you said,
Correct,
famously, the Bulls faced that, and it was
correct.
baptism by fire, as you put it. So I think it was a little bit unfair in those days compared to what it is now, and it is much more leveled fields.
So you're right that I mean back in the day, like I said, it was street style. It was kind of a wrestling match happening on a basketball court. It's not like that anymore. Uh, I don't know how that influences Kobe's legacy. I think again, that the fact that uh, I think one of the reasons that people like look at all these three guys, three of the four great players of this era, this era between let's say the early to mid 90s, let's say 93, 94 to all the way up to 2013, 14, and 2016 is when Kobe retires, and
Sure.
Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett go out at the same time. So who are the great 4 or 5 ballers of this era? It's Shaq, it's Kobe, it's Kevin Garnett, it's Tim Duncan. And I think the reason that they were able to play for so long is because when they came into the league, which is around the mid 90s, they were still able to, they were rookies, right? So they were young. So they also had to go through this, kind of baptism by fire where, you were kind of, the style of play was much more physical and there was hand checking was allowed. As opposed to in the middle of their careers, especially wing players, the shooting guards, the small forwards like Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, they benefited that having gone through that process of being part of the rules where hand checking was allowed, and then suddenly in 2004, after 2004 season, the NBA says hand checking will be called a foul. They just got a sense of freedom. So I think they had the benefit of both worlds, that they played in the league when the rules were a lot stricter, or let's say
Interesting.
the game was much more physical, and
Right.
and then they saw the other side of it when the referee started blowing the whistle a lot more regularly, and if you touch somebody, you were immediately called for a flagrant one and a flagrant two, and then you could be ejected from the game as well. Like now today, a lot of people complain that it's probably reached the other end of it. That
Other end, yeah, yeah, yeah.
a scratch is called a flagrant one or a flagrant two. So, well, opinion is still out on it. But I think these guys, the great players who came into the league right at this halfway point, where hand checking was allowed, and then one fine day it suddenly became disallowed. I think they benefited because they had seen both sides, and they were able to, kind of the fact that they could score, let's say, a player like Bryant, if he could average 25 points per game with hand checking, the moment hand checking was disallowed, he managed to work his way to 81 points very easily.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? There is a reason why 81 points happens in the post hand in post 2004, and it did not happen before 2004, because
Right.
before 2004 hand checking was allowed.
Makes sense. Okay, so in our conversation about greatest Laker, you're putting Kobe as a close second, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right
and
behind
and
Magic.
and that's not a in any way a discredit to Kobe, just because the
Well,
Lakers
absolutely
franchise.
not. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't think there, even though Boston has one title more than the Los Angeles Lakers, and just in terms of the personalities who have played for the Lakers, I think Bryant, and knowing very well that LeBron is probably going to retire from here, so I did not even mention LeBron, uh, but just because that these guys wore those jerseys right from beginning to end, I think Kobe is a close second to Magic Johnson.
Right, right. Makes sense. I think I agree with you. And greatest player of the generation, do you think Kobe's got that?
Well, again, I would bifurcate it. I would say that, like I said before, I think Kobe's greatest legacy is that no other individual carried the torch in the post Jordan era the way he did. Shaq may have been much more dominant in those early years that they were together, and even in the late 90s. Allen Iverson may have reached out to a lot more youth in the United States. Uh, uh, Tim Duncan had 5 titles, as many as Kobe Bryant, and was certainly the alpha star on a majority of those 5 titles on his own team,
Definite, definite.
if not the last two. But certainly he was a very big part of the first 3 titles. And Garnett, of course, I mean, one NBA championship, one Defensive Player of the Year, one regular season MVP. Great player. But I think that I would probably rate Shaq, Duncan, Kobe, Garnett, Iverson. That would be my, uh, what do you call, hierarchy among of these 5 great players in
Oh,
that
wow.
period.
You would grade
Yeah.
Shaq over Duncan and Kobe, huh?
Yes. I mean, Shaq at peak Shaq, nobody could stop. It's that simple. The last time the NBA has had a team winning three titles back to back is the Los Angeles Lakers of 2000 2002, and the fact that they were able to do it is because of Shaq.
Right, right.
That's no Tim Duncan didn't do it. Kobe Bryant could not do it from 2008 to 2010. So Shaq is, I mean, at his peak, which is those peak years are, you could say, 98 to 2003 or even 2004. He was absolutely unstoppable. Tim Duncan, just the fact that I think if Tim Duncan was on another team, like outside of the San Antonio Spurs, his numbers would have been much more better, because Popovich was all about sacrifice and team, and
Right, right.
giving his stars the right amount of minutes as opposed to letting them play as much as they wanted and all of that. So he didn't have that luxury that some of these other stars had. So I'm sure Duncan's numbers would have been even more than what they are individually. I mean, I think titles are 5. That's great. So in terms of, if we were just to look at basketball achievement and stats, I would place Kobe at number 3. But I
Okay.
think if you just look at overall legacy, whose appeal was the most? I genuinely think, like in India, for example, this new generation that I deal with, and I have worked with, the 25, 30-year-olds, they didn't come into the game because of Shaquille O'Neal. Because you can't come into a game saying that, I am going to become Shaquille O'Neal, because Shaquille O'Neal is, it's there in his genes. He's like, that kind of physical stature. You cannot work towards it in a gym. You're born with that
Right.
kind of 7 feet 1 inch kind
Frame.
of build.
Yeah.
You cannot
Yeah.
work on it. The thing with players like Kobe Bryant and Jordan is even their athleticism is actually God given. And of course they work very hard to own it and sculpt it and get better. But at least it's somewhat in our imagination that, okay, this is possible. Even if I'm not 6 feet 6 inches, if I spin in the air and I finish acrobatically, I might be like Kobe Bryant. This is just how we think. It's not actually what happens, but at least it is a little more plausible, right? So in terms, so these guys, these 25, 30-year-old boys who were drawn into the NBA, they were drawn into the NBA because of Kobe Bryant. They were not drawn into to the game because of Tim Duncan, or because of Shaquille O'Neal, or because of Garnett. It was because of Kobe Bryant, and I think that is his greatest, that he was the game's biggest brand ambassador, uh, Michael Jordan era. That
Right.
I'm fairly certain of.
Right, right. Yeah, certainly. I mean, Kobe had this like star quality to him. I mean, like you said, that's what kind of draws young kids to the games. And
Yeah,
so, the numbers might, point to someone else. Just a
yeah.
minute on Shaq before we move
And
on to the next.
no,
Sorry.
Himanshu, I'll just add a point. So see, you see the star quality also worked in for Kobe in this way. See, I mean, if it just came to dunks, a very key part of the excitement of the NBA and the attraction of the NBA is these, explosive dunks and athleticism and acrobatics and all of that. And one could argue that Vince Carter was probably, in my books, he's the greatest dunker the NBA has ever seen. Some of his dunk contest when he won
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah.
considered the
Or even
greatest dunk
Garnett.
contest performance ever. Yeah. So I'm saying that. So Kobe was that. He was great at dunks, but the playoff success that Vince Carter did not have. Okay, Kobe had that playoff success. So similarly, you might say Allen Iverson, very tough, great player. He backed himself in every difficult situation, but then he did not, because of his height, he was 6'1", and he did not have that those dunks, those highlight dunks with which he could entice the viewing public. So Kobe was actually the perfect mix. He brought in the highlights also with his acrobatics and his athleticism, but he could score also as prolifically as some of the people before him. And certainly since Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, nobody has had an 80 plus point performance. He's the only other NBA name who has had an 80 plus point performance. And then when it came to the playoffs, he was like locked in. So Kobe was the entire package, just like Jordan was. So which is why Shaq and Duncan aren't about dunks. They may be about championships and winning, but they weren't about dunks. Garnett, only one title compared to Kobe's 5 titles. Allen Iverson, no titles, even if he was about a tough player, fashion icon, all of that. But Kobe was just had everything that these guys were lacking in, and that's what made him what he is.
And Akshay, just a minute on Shaq before we move on, since you rank him highly. Shaq had, questionable shooting, right? I mean, he's mid-range to pretty much. He was essentially a post-up player, right? And
Yeah,
he did
yeah,
not. He was pretty bad at shooting and everything.
yeah.
Was that something to do with the frame and his size, or was that something that he
Well,
just never developed?
generally centers have always
Centers,
struggled.
sure.
Yeah. So despite that, what he was a 28, 14 player, 28 points, 14 rebounds kind of guy. Um, so I think a lot of great centers in the past, whether it was Wilt Chamberlain, whether it was Kareem himself, very poor free throw shooters. I mean, we've seen even Dwight Howard in recent years. Giannis is not a great free throw shooter. I mean, not at the level of Shaq. DeAndre Jordan, very poor free throw
Right,
shooter.
right.
So I mean, we're nitpicking over here. Shaq
Yeah,
didn't
because
need a
we have
mid-range game.
also had some on the other end, right? Like Hakeem was, I remember, a decent shooter, and
Yes.
so we have got some examples on the other end too. But you're right, and mostly centers, that's not part of their job profile, so to speak. So,
Yeah. 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 Well,
and
now you have centers who have great shooters. You look at the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, he's shooting three-pointers.
yes,
Joel Embiid with Philadelphia 76ers is shooting
he's on
three-pointers.
fire. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Joel Embiid is shooting three-pointers. DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, who actually is a power forward but can play the center position also when asked for, when they want to go small ball. They can shoot the three-pointer also. So the game has changed now. It's no
That's true.
longer that,
Right.
the centers are supposed to work only in the low post. In fact, it's considered bad if you throw them the ball down in the low post and expect them to operate from there, because it's considered inefficient.
Right, right. And how does our man Kobe Bryant stand in the conversation on the second greatest shooting guard ever?
Well, he's I would say he cemented that for himself. I
Okay,
think, again, there's no shame in being, anytime you are second to Jordan. I
absolutely.
don't think there's any shame in that. And the fact that you are still ahead of several great other shooting guards like Dwayne Wade, Clyde Drexler, so many other great shooting guards. I think it's just phenomenal that Kobe Bryant is second over there, because, and again, the fact is that, for you to model yourself on Jordan and get close to him. I mean, he may not have finished off averaging 30 points per game for the season like Jordan did, but the fact that he brought himself into that conversation, that top three shooting guards of all time, second, actually, if you look at it, I think it's just phenomenal.
So you don't think there is much argument over that?
No, I don't think so. I think it's easier. There's a lot more gap between Kobe and the third best
Hmm.
shooting guard of all time than, let's say, any other position. Like, for example, centers. You'd really
Right.
struggle to kind of pick the second guy over the third guy, or third guy over the second guy, whoever it is, or let's say even at the point guard position. But I
Right.
think in the shooting guard position, we know the greatest ever is Jordan, and we know the
Sure.
second best is Kobe Bryant. I don't think there's anyone who will dispute that.
And how much of a gap is there between Jordan and Kobe?
Well, I think there is a gap. I think that
Sure.
gap is a little more than the gap between, let's say, Magic and Kobe as the greatest Lakers ever.
Right.
And that's just because of what Jordan achieved. I mean, the thing that I keep telling people about Jordan is that, just think about it from this point of view. LeBron James went to 8 consecutive NBA finals between 2011 to 2018, right? And people say, wow, like, in a decade, in a 10-year span, he went to 8 NBA finals. Now just think about it this way, that Jordan, between 91 to 98, that's 8 NBA finals, he went to 6 NBA finals. Okay, he won each of those NBA finals. LeBron played in 8 NBA finals and won only 3 of them, right? Jordan went to 6 NBA finals between 91 to 98, and he won all 6 of them. And do you know why he didn't go to the other 2 NBA finals? Because he was retired. So it's just incredible to understand. You're not going to see it again, that a team dominated the league in the way that the Bulls dominated the league in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
once in a
never
truly once
you're
in a life.
not the Golden State Warriors were saying that, we're doing this and we're doing that. What did they do ultimately? They didn't even win a three-peat, which is what I said, that the last time somebody won a three-peat was in 2000, 2002, that the Lakers did. For all the dominance that the Golden State Warriors showed, they did not win back to back to back titles. They won in 2015. Many people even say that had LeBron had a healthy Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, maybe they would not have won in 2015 also. Then they lost in 2016. They only won in 2017 and 18 when Durant came back, and then they lost in 2019.
Right, right.
So as dominant and as great as the Golden State Warriors were, what did they do? They went to 5 NBA finals between 2015 to 2019. They're not even making it to the playoffs in 2020, which means over a 6 year span, they have gone to the NBA finals 5 times and they have won it 3 times. In 6 years, or let's say 8 years, the Bulls had gone to 6 NBA finals and won six NBA titles. And in each of those NBA finals, Jordan was the finals MVP. I mean, he
Yes,
was clearly ahead of the next best player on his team, who was Scottie Pippen. So I don't think there's any shame in being second to Michael Jordan. It's just the way it is.
right, right.
I personally don't think that we will ever see a player as dominant as Jordan was in a team sport. In a team sport, I mean, you might always find a great player in an individual sport, but not the way Jordan was in a team sport. And that too, the league was almost as it is today. This is we're not talking about Bill Russell when he won 11 championships and the league was just about 10, 12, 14 teams, and you had 2 rounds and you won the NBA finals. Jordan played when the league is as we know it. You had the first round, you had the conference semis, you had the conference finals, you had the NBA finals, you had best of 7 game series, uh, you had an 82 game season. Uh, so I think with more or less, and it was a lot more physical also, like I've already said. So I don't think there's any harm or disrespect or you get diminished if you are placed second to Jordan. I think all these players admit that being in the conversation alongside Michael Jordan is just a privilege. And to
Absolutely.
be honest, LeBron might get there ahead of Kobe Bryant also in terms of just the conversation. Uh, but one has to wait and see where he finishes. He's not yet done,
Right.
so one will have to leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to talk about LeBron some other time because I've got
Yes.
a lot to talk about him too. So, real quickly, gun to head, can you give me your top five guards of all time?
So guards or shooting guards?
Shooting guards. Yes.
So okay, Jordan, Kobe, like I said, is 1, 2. I'd pick Dwayne Wade at 3. I'd pick Clyde Drexler at 4. Who else would be at 5? Um, Ray Allen, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
definitely. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Ray Allen at 5. Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
Stockton wasn't a shooting guard, right?
Or
Stockton.
Jerry West. Jerry West would be at 5 actually. Jerry
Okay.
West would be at
Okay.
5.
I actually
Yeah.
haven't seen any film of Jerry West.
I
I
mean,
don't.
I'm just. Neither have I seen actual game footage of Jerry West, but just the fact that he went to 9 NBA finals, he won once. It's the only time in NBA finals history that a player from the losing team has been a finals MVP, which is when the award was instituted in 1969. So I'd probably put Jerry West. I might even put him at number 3 or 4. I would certainly put Dwayne Wade ahead of him because of Wade also has 3 NBA titles. So I'd put Dwayne Wade at 3. I'd put Jerry West at 4, and I'd put Clyde Drexler at 5. You could also have James Harden now as one of those top.
Oh
Again,
yeah,
he's not
yes.
done.
How can we
He's
forget the
not done
beard?
with
Yeah.
his career, and so one will have to look and see where he finishes. But uh, right now, we leave the current players out of the conversation. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, actually, just the last thing. So I'm pretty sure you have heard about this, but recently, after Kobe's passing, Tracy McGrady came on TV and said that, when they were teens, Kobe often used to say that, he would like to die young. And, I chalked this up under, bunch of immature, crazy things that we say when we are kids and teens. But, at the same time, it is something which makes you think about the man's mindset. What do you make of that? I mean, does it provide any kind of insight into the kind of person Kobe was, or do you think that shows like he had been thinking about his legacy all the while?
No, I don't think I wouldn't even like to speculate because I mean
Exactly. You don't,
I
right.
would I have not even heard of Kobe ever saying something like this. But I doubt, I mean, if at all he said it, it could be one of those things that could be put down to, youth,
Right.
and, and immaturity. But I don't think Kobe was one of those, kind of dark,
I don't
in
think
a
so.
dark space kind of athletes.
And in fact, exactly the opposite, right? I mean, he had mentioned that his next 20 years are going to be even better than what he did on the
Yeah,
court.
yeah, yeah,
So this
yeah.
doesn't seem like.
Yes.
Anyways, well, that was great, Akshay. Thanks a lot again, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I hope it was worth your time as well.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, yeah. Anytime anyone calls me to talk basketball, I'm generally happy to do it.
hope you liked our chat in the remembrance of Kobe Bryant. I consider my generation very lucky to have witnessed an athlete of Kobe's caliber, along with other insanely gifted ones like Federer, Sachin, Tiger Woods, and Schumacher. Kobe left us way too soon, and for his fans and fans of the game, that will sting for a long, long time. But we will always have our memories to remember him by. Thank you, Kobe, and thank you for the memories. If you have a comment, suggestion, or anything which you would like to add to the conversation held on the episode, do drop me a comment on Twitter. Also, do subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please do drop us a review. You can follow me on Twitter at loveofcinemasf8 for podcast-related updates and my tweets on all things movies. That's all I got. This is Himanshu, signing off, and like always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.